Well, hey friends and neighbors, it's Chuck out at Sheridan Park Farms. Welcome back to the farm. It's another beautiful day here, fall, in the mountains of western North Carolina. We had a little frost this morning. Hopefully all those nasty biting bugs are dying and going back to Hades where they belong. But anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about. We're up to our old tricks again today. Saundra is in the house doing a little bit of cooking. I'm up here in the shop, got a little project going on up here. So hang out with us for a little bit. If you like her cooking, here we go. If you like what I do, God bless you. Hang out with us for a little bit. All right, y'all. So first things first, we are up in the shop, and I thought it would be kind of fun to go over sort of where we're at on building our timber frame building. Y'all have seen me doing a whole lot of work out the sawmill, but not a whole lot of work on the actual frame. Now, we did take a lot of our timbers down to our friend Dan Flynn at Quarry View Woodworks, and he had a timber framing class down there, and we cut a lot of the frame for the building. When I say frame, I mean the flooring system, the posts, the beams, ties, some of the bracing. We got some of that done. But one of the big parts that's left is the roofing system and the rafters and then the porch. So what we're working on today, we're going to work on cutting one of our rafters, or actually it ends up being half of a rafter, but we'll talk about that here in a second. First off though, this morning before I got started, Saundra came up and helped me clean up the shop and get myself an area organized where I could work. Now, timber framing is fairly, it's somewhat tool intensive. You got to have a lot of different stuff to do it. You can do it minimally, but you know, some tools make things just make things easier, and that's what I'm kind of after, is making things easier. So we cleared out an area this morning, and I needed all my tools in a location where I'm working, because working out of a bag, you know, if you got tools in a bag or something like that, stuff gets tossed and thrown and pitched, and you know, some of these things like these chisels, you don't want that edge banging up against something in a tool bag. So I wanted to lay everything out. So let me show you what all the tools are here. And I've got a timber up here, and we'll just go through and we'll do a full joinery on this 4x6 of yellow pine that I've got up here on the sawbucks.
So we've got a birthday boy in the house today, and his favorite cake by far is carrot cake. So that's what we're doing today. We're fixing supper. He wanted brisket mac and cheese with some green beans and a salad, and then his favorite cake, carrot cake. So we're going to get started on our cake right now. A couple cups of flour, 2 teaspoons of baking soda, and a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. So those are my dry ingredients. And then, let's see here. No, that's not all. We got 2 teaspoons of cinnamon we need to put in this. Now we're going to measure out a couple of cups of sugar. Three-quarter cup of vegetable oil and 3/4 cup of buttermilk. A good little tip when you're measuring out oil and like buttermilk or milk or something like that, if you'll do the vegetable oil first and then do the milk behind it, you'll see that my cup here is clean. That oil puts a film around it, and every bit of your buttermilk will go into your measure. So that's pretty cool. I've got my eggs over here. I already cracked those. So we're good to go with that. And I'm going to measure out a little vanilla. 2 teaspoons of vanilla. So this is my basic cake ingredients here. And then the add-ons that make this a carrot cake are, of course, some grated carrot, some pineapple, some coconut, and some pecans. So we're going to work on that next. I'm going to grate my carrots. I believe I'll do that next. So my recipe calls for grated carrot, and I'm going to do this with my food processor. It's pretty quick. If I can get it to work right. Oh, here we go. And then my recipe calls for about 4 ounces of shredded coconut and 8 ounces of pineapple. And it calls for crushed pineapple. And it looks like I got the wrong thing. I got the chunks. So I'm going to have to use my food processor to shred up this pineapple, which is not a big deal. And there we go.
This building is, and I will try to find a rendered drawing of a layout of the building to put up on the screen here to show you what this is going to look like. But just to recap, 16 by 20 with a 10-foot porch timber frame building that we're going to be putting up out here next to the sawmill. Now, my goal has been to cut as much of the product, posts, beams, rafters, joists, what will eventually be siding, underlayment, flooring. My goal has been to cut as much of that as I can here and not buy any more wood than is just absolutely necessary from a big box store. And that takes a little bit of time to get the material, to get the logs in, to actually cut them to size, cut enough. For example, this is a rafter. This is half of a rafter. This is one side. Now the way the rafters work, and I'll post a picture here of what the detail on those is. I think I've got that. One side of the rafter has a tenon in it, and a tenon is an outcropping on the end of the timber. The other end of the rafter has a mortise, which is a pocket, and that tenon sets down in that mortise, and those rafters form a 45-degree angle because this is a 12-12 pitch roof, a 45-degree angle, and then there's a pin that goes through the middle of that, and that's what holds it together. So this is just half of one rafter, basically, one rafter set. So we're going to be cutting the tenon on this, and then down at the end, we've got to cut it to length, of course, and then we've got to cut a little bit of a detail in it to make it look nice, and we'll talk a little bit about that when we get down there. First thing we have to do is we're going to look at this rafter. This is a 4x6 southern yellow pine that I cut a few weeks ago, had them laying outside, and they've got a little bit of sun coloration on the top. The sides are a little bit different, but the tops here, the side that was exposed upward, I think I put some tin over it. No, I didn't, because it was real dry when I laid these out. The tops have got a little bit of discoloration, and that adds a little bit of character to it. I'm fine with it. I'm not planing these down. We're not going to run these through a planer. We're not going to run a power planer. We're not going to run a hand planer over them. They are rough. They're intended to be rough. That's part of the look that I'm going for. But the first thing I want to do with this thing is I want to crown it. I want to see if this timber has a natural arch to it. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't, just kind of depend on where they come from on the tree, how they were cut, how they dried. But we're going to look at this thing and find and see if it has a natural arch. If it does have a natural arch, we're going to position that arch so that it is upward, so that the pressure is coming down on that arch, and that arch is helping to support the roof system that's above it. So I'm going to get down the end. We'll just look, and I'm just going to look and see if it's got a crown in it.
And then the last thing we need is a couple pecans. Looks pretty good. So I'm just about ready to get started here. I've got all my ingredients out. We'll look at those in just a second. But the last thing I need to do before I start mixing this is get my cake pans ready. And I'm going to go ahead and preheat the oven to 350. And the way I grease my pans is I use duck fat in my pans, and then I'll dust them with some flour. Chuck has always liked this cake. When we first met, for his very first birthday, when we first met, I made this cake for him, and it's been his favorite ever since. So I keep making it. All right, we've got our cake pans ready. I'm going to set these right over here.
So it does have a natural crown in it, and I've got the crown pointed up. And so now I'm going to mark this. This is not a timber framing class. This is not intended to be a timber framing class at all. So I'm going to mark this as my reference face, and then this is going to be my adjacent face down here. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this thing. I'm going to square the end of it off up here on the side on the end where the tenon is going to be.
So here's my ingredients. We'll start with the eggs and the sugar. The icing is here. This is cream cheese icing. And then we also make a glaze to go over this cake. And that's what this other pat of butter is for. But we'll go over that. So we're going to start here with our sugar and eggs. Okay, so we're going to start here with our sugar and our eggs. I've already got the sugar in the bowl. And we'll do one egg at a time. And then we'll alternate our wet and dry ingredients. And then we'll add our pineapple. our coconut. Our carrots. I know it seems like a lot of carrots, man, it is. And I'm going to get my pans, and then the pecans, we're just going to fold them in by hand. And that's all it takes for this cake. It's a very forgiving cake. And that is it. So here's what my batter looks like. And we'll put it in the pans, and the oven is ready. We're ready to go.
According to our plans, we're going to be cutting a 1.5 inch tenon in the end of this timber. And so we're using a tool called a Big Al Bornemann, and a fellow by the name of Jim Rogers sells these. I'll post Jim's information in the description down below. Jim's where I got it. Jim's a sort of world famous timber framer that actually was one of the instructors, one of the classes that I took. And this tenon needs to be 5.5 inches long. So we're going to take our Swanson square here, and we're going to narrow it down to 5.5 inches. And we'll come in here and we'll make our mark at 5.5 inches so we know how deep our tenon is going to be. There, that gives us a point to start from. All right, using our Big Al, we have a mark, or we have a slot here at 1.5 inches. So what we're going to do, we're going to come in from our reference face, which is this, or eris, this corner right here. We're going to come in 1.5 inches and pull it 5 inches long, 5.5 inches long. Then we're going to go up here to our 3-inch mark, which 1.5 inches plus 1.5 inches is 3, and we'll mark that. And right there is our basic, very, very basic shape of what our tenon is going to be, that right there. Now, we'll go ahead and pull our lines to each side so that we know where to make our cuts. So we'll cut to there and there. Now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take a knife and I'm going to knife my lines, and that will give me a really clean edge for me to run my chisels up against so that we can get a very exact measurement. Because on a line, a drawn line with a pencil, is that 1.5 inches or is that 1.5 inches over there? Or is 1.5 inches somewhere in the middle right there? We're not real sure, but if we use a knife, we can get very, very precise. One other thing we can do real quick is we can pull our lines down each side of the timber so that we know where our cut lines are going to be. And we can also mark this as waist, 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 and this is our tenon right there. All right, for our next trick, so we flip the timber up on its side. So again, this is our eris, this is our reference. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a small saw. I just picked this one up at Hobo Freight, and we're going to kerf down to our line. We're going to go just north of that line. We're not going to quite hit it, but we're going to go just north of that line, and we're going to cut some kerfs through here, and then we'll take our mallet. We'll do what's called kerf and smash. We'll smash those out, and then we'll take a chisel and clean that up, make it real neat. But the first thing I want to do here is I'm going to set my saw depth to the right depth on this thing. Go just to the line, just right to that line.
All right, cakes are in the oven. I'm going to set my timer for about 40 minutes. And we'll check them at 40 minutes.
All right. So this is going to give us a rough outline of this particular shoulder of the tenon. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to find that knife line that I laid in there a minute ago, and I'll start my chisel right in the very edge of that, and then that gives me a good plane. Got a little deep. That gives me a good plane to get started on, to start taking that extra material out of there. And this southern yellow pine is so easy to work. You really can almost do it without a hammer, just with your chisel. Got a little deep on it right there. Don't want to do that, but it won't hurt anything. So here's the first pass at our tenon. Got it pretty clean. The light's not the best in the world, but that's pretty smooth. Now we'll flip it over. We're going to cut this section of wood off here, and that will just leave us an 1.5 inch tenon. Okay, so she's starting to take shape. Here is our tenon. Now, this timber is about 6 inches from here to here, about 6 inches. We want this tenon to be 5.5 inches from top to bottom. So we're going to flip it over, and we're actually going to trim a very small portion of this tenon off so that it's only 5.5 inches.
Okay, for the next part of this recipe, we're going to make a buttermilk glaze. And so what we do is we make this glaze, and then we let it cool down, and then I paint it onto the cake, and I'll show you how I do that. But we're going to start with a cup of sugar. And then we're going to add a 1/2 cup of butter. And a 1/2 cup of buttermilk. I'll go ahead and turn my heat on kind of low. And then I'm going to add about a tablespoon of light corn syrup. Heavy tablespoon. And I'm also going to add a 1.5 teaspoons of baking soda. And that's why I'm using a bit of a large pot here, because this is going to bubble up and get real foamy. And it's going to change colors. It's going to basically turn into caramel. And when we get it off the heat, once we're finished cooking it, we'll add a teaspoon of vanilla. And I want to show this to everybody. This is my butter bell. And I've had a couple people ask me about this. As you can see, it's got butter in it. And this butter in this is soft. And I'm going to add a little to it. And so what I do is I just push it down in there, push it up against the sides, and it will stay in this bell. And the purpose of this butter bell is so you can have soft butter at any time that you want it. And the way it works is you put your butter down in it just like I've done here, and it comes in 2 pieces. This is the bell, and then the housing here has got a little water in the bottom of it. And so what you do is you take your bell and you just turn it over into that bowl, and that's sealed up. So you've got soft butter out anytime you need it.
Okay, we've got our square set at 5.5 inches now. This corner right here, that's our eris. That's our reference point. We're measuring everything off of this corner right here. So that corner correlates to that side. So we're going to come in with our square set at 5.5 inches, and we're going to trim the bottom of this tenon off to make it 5.5 inches tall. Now, we're also going to cut what's called a reduction, and it's partially on some of our mortise and tenons on our post and beam. It's functional. Here, primarily, it's decorative, but it may provide a little bit of function too. But what we want to do, we're only going to make this reduction back 1.5 inches. So we'll find our 1.5 inch mark on here, and we're just going to mark our tenon so that we know that that's as far as we need to go. Again, coming back to our reference face, we're going to mark at 5.5 inches. Just pull that down. Now, all of this is going to get trimmed off. I'm gonna flip it over and do the other side. All right, I'm gonna use my Japanese pull saw, and we're gonna cut along this line that we've made for our reduction. Now, I know probably right about now, some of y'all are saying, because this is one of 13, and then I've got 13 of the other ones to do with the mortise in them. And I know right about now some of y'all are saying, why in the world don't you go down to Lowe's or Home Depot or Parker's, that's a building supply company we've got here, and buy you some 2x6s and some rafter hangers and some whatever else you need, or just go buy some trusses and put on top of that thing. And I could do that, and that would work. That absolutely would work. But we live in such a instant gratification culture nowadays that folks, and including me, I certainly put myself in this category, have lost their patience to work at and wait on something of quality. And I think that's true in a whole lot of aspects of life nowadays. You know, one of the things we focus on here is growing quality food. Well, that takes time. Having a good marriage, like what me and Saundra have got, has taken time. That's not happened overnight. And this building, I expect this building to be standing long after they plant me in the ground. But to have something of quality and something that's meaningful, it just takes a little bit of time, a little bit of effort, and a lot of this instant gratification that we're living with nowadays. That's just not the fruit of that labor.
So I've got this on about a medium heat, and you can see it's starting to turn brown and bubble up, and it'll if you let it go, it'll boil over. So you kind of got to watch it. All right, I think that's probably good enough. Now I'm just going to take this off the burner, turn off the heat, and just let it sit and cool down some.
To finish this out, just to add a little bit of flair to it, we're going to do a 45-degree angle from where this reduction ends. We're going to do a 45-degree angle from there. I'm going to use my 45. From there up to what is essentially the bottom of the tenon, or the bottom of the timber. So we'll do something like that. All right. Then we will connect our lines. So for my next trick, we'll take a chisel. We're going to set it on our line. I've got my speed square here. We're going to set it up so that we're at 45 degrees. Lean the chisel against it. We're going to create a little 45-degree angle right there. Clean that off just a dab. And these aren't going to be exact every time, matching up to the one before them, so what we'll have to do is just go back and clean it up just a fuzz, but that's no big deal. We'll get them all pretty close. Okay, here it is, the final tenon. So we have got our 1.5-inch tenon that is 5.5 inches tall, and we are 1.5 inches off of our reference face. So whenever we're doing this, we're doing 1.5 inches off the reference face, 1.5 inch tenon, and then whatever's left is just whatever's left. We've got our nice detail. I got off with the saw right there. We've got our nice detail on the bottom with the reduction. Looks nice. Now, this thing's probably about 12.5 feet long, but we don't need 12.5 feet. Let me show you what we're going to do to cut it off to length, and a little bit of fancy detail we'll put down there on the far end.
Now this is what the sauce looks like after the foaminess has died down and it's cooled off a little bit. The cakes are finished and they look fabulous. I'm gonna let them sit here for 5 or 10 minutes and then I'll pop them out of the pans. I'll run a knife around the edge and pop them out, and then let them cool completely before we put the glaze on them.
Okay. Oh, now gone. Next thing we got to do, we're going to cut this thing to length, and this rafter needs to be 11 feet, 3 1/16 of an inch. So we're going to mark that right there. Now let's get our a squaring tool. And we're going to mark all the way around this thing so that we know where the end of our rafter needs to be. And to do that, I'm just going to use this big speed square right here. That's about the easiest thing to use. And we're going to square everything off of our reference face, which is the Eris, the corner over here next to me. So we'll go to 11, 3 1/16. We'll mark it there. We'll pull our line down on that side. We'll pull our line down on this side, like so. Now, we could go ahead and cut this off, but we've got a couple more marks to make. Let me show you what else we have to do. So, when this rafter is standing up, this rafter is going to be sitting at a 12-12 pitch, which is 45 degrees. For every 1 inch of run, you got 1 inch of rise. That's 45 degrees, okay? So what we want to do is, when this rafter is standing up, we want for the bottom face of this rafter to be parallel to the ground. So in order to do that, we want to make another cut of 45 degrees to cut a portion of the bottom of this rafter off so that it is parallel to the ground. So when we get done cutting, this is what will be left. Now to add just a little bit of flair, we're going to come in 1 inch off of where our end mark is going to be, or where the end of our rafter is going to be. We're going to come in 1 inch, get something to mark 1 inch with, something easy to mark 1 inch with. We're going to come in 1 inch right here. Off of the end of our rafter. Now we're going to make another 45 going back the other direction, just for a little bit of flair. That's all it is. It's just a little bit of flair. Find my inch mark. Right there it is. We'll come back into here. So all this will be gone. Now I'm going to go over on the other side, make my marks over there so that I can cut it straight.
Okay, so I've waited about 10 minutes. I have run a knife around the edge of these pans, and we're going to try this on camera. They may fall apart, so we'll see what happens. Sounded good. Look at that. Very nice. Well, let's try the other one. That one stuck a little bit, but it came out good. That's great. All right, so we'll let these finish cooling down. They're still pretty warm. And then we'll get to work on putting this glaze on them. So while we're waiting on these cakes to cool down, I am going to go ahead and make my icing. So that's 3/4 of a cup of butter, and then 1/8 ounce pack of cream cheese, and then a 3-ounce pack of cream cheese. And we will put this in the on the stand here with the mixer. And we'll go ahead and get this going. Once I get the butter and the cream cheese all mixed up really well, we're going to add 3 cups of powdered sugar. So I'm going to let this run for a few minutes so it gets real creamy. And you can see what this looks like. All right, I'm going to slow this down, and now I'm going to add my powdered sugar. And I'm going to go ahead and add at least a cup worth right now. So that's 2 cups. Go ahead and add a little vanilla. And we'll scrape down the sides here to make sure it's fully mixed up and incorporated. I'm going to add just a little more sugar. There we go. That's more like it. All right, I believe our icing's ready.
All right, so here's the end of our rafter detail. So we've got this nice 45 here, and then we've got our nice 45 here. Now, some folks say, oh, you can't match up cuts whenever you're using a skill saw, and I agree you can't, but if y'all could feel that, there's a little bit of a ridge. I don't know if you can see it. There's just a little bit of a ridge right there, but the rest of it is pretty good. You know, for what we're doing, and I could take a plane probably may do that, but take a plane or a sander and just knock that down. But I mean, it come out pretty good there. Not bad at all. So let's see what this thing, so just as an example of what this thing will look like. See if I can show y'all here. So if you can imagine under the eave of the building, when this thing is standing up at a 45, that should be, I know not 45, but that'll be parallel to the ground, and that should look really, really nice. So that's what our rafters are going to look like.
So our cakes aren't completely cooled off, but they're close enough. So what I'm going to be doing over the next little while is just basically painting this glaze onto these cakes. And this will take me a little while because I'll do it in layers. Just as soon as a layer soaks in, I'll put another one on it. And as you can see, my glaze is thickened up some, but as it's laying on the warm cake, you can see it's starting to soak in, and that's what we want to see.
Okay, y'all, there it is. That is essentially, you know, a finished rafter, or half of a rafter set. Like I said, you know, we've got the other ones that we have to cut, and they will have the mortise in them, and then that tenon sits down in there, and there's a peg hole. We'll still need to drill our hole here, but we'll probably wait until the day of to do that. They don't take but just a second to do. And there may need to be a little trimming done whenever we get to fit up, just to check everything, make sure that everything fits like it should. You know, there may need to be a little bit of trimming, but the majority of the work is done, and it shouldn't be too big a deal to get it put together. Big shout out to my buddy Dan down at Corey View Woodworks. I'll leave a link in the description down below for his webpage and for his YouTube channel. Go over and give him a like on his, follow on his YouTube channel especially. He done a video the other day where he had built some, I think he was commissioned for the work, had built some Gothic style trusses. Works of art, absolute works of art. They were beautiful, beautiful. But go over there and check him out. But I think that's going to do it for this one. I'm going to put this one up, and I believe Saundra's got a little supper ready, and I think I'm going to go partake of that little thing she's been cooking for y'all. Let's go see what she's got done.
Here's the birthday boy and his cake.
Carrot cake. That's my favorite. So carrot cake, that's the first. Man, that's good. This is the first thing I think you ever made in front of me that I watched you cook. Yep. was a carrot cake for my birthday, and that's been my favorite ever since. So something she probably didn't tell y'all, today is also our wedding anniversary.
No, I didn't say anything about that.
And we get asked, I get a lot of comments, and people ask a lot of personal questions about me and Saundra and where we met and how we met and all that kind of thing. But we've been married 20 years today. We've been together for a little over 23, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah.
We've been together for a long time, so thank you for my cake.
You're welcome.
Supper sure was good too. I had barbecue brisket, macaroni, and cheese.
Yes.
So my calorie count for the day is about 1,500,000, million and a half. So, but thank you for my cake.
Happy birthday, baby.
Well, let's cut that thing. I'm hungry.
Okay.
I'm ready for some of it.
Get you a plate.